Good morning, Year 2s. Welcome back. Today is Thursday, the 21st of January, and I am going to take you through our writing tasks for today. So I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what we are going to be getting up to. Okay, so yesterday you were busy writing your opening of your story, and today you're going to be carrying on with your story writing. But before we do that, we're going to look at another punctuation mark, which appears a lot in this story of Poles Apart. It's called an ellipsis. Now, an ellipsis is made up of 3 dots, and you often see it at the end of a page before turning over to see what happens next in the story. And it's used by the author to create tension and suspense. What is going to happen next? And I've got a picture of one of the pages from the book on screen, and I'm going to read that part of the story to you so you can see where the author uses the ellipsis. So let me just find that page in my book. I'm going to read the page beforehand as well. "Can we have our picnic now?" said Pog, but it wasn't the best spot. So they followed Mr. White all the way to, then I've got my 3 dots, I've got my ellipsis, creating that suspense. Where are they going to end up? All the way to America. "Howdy," said Mr. Pilchard Brown. "Busy," said Peaky. "Buzzing," said Poots. "Can we have our picnic?" said Pog. "Not now, dear," said Mrs. Pilchard Brown. America was awesome, but it wasn't home. So they followed Mr. White all the way to, and then we've got our ellipsis again, creating that suspense. Where will they go next? So you could see that when I read out the story, I didn't actually read out the ellipsis. I just had a prolonged pause in my reading. Now, sometimes when children read stories with an ellipsis in, they like to use some sound effects. So this is how you might sometimes hear it read. So they followed Mr. White all the way to England. But we actually don't need sound effects. I know it does create quite a bit of tension and drama, but it's more to show a prolonged pause in your reading. So I've got a couple of more definitions of an ellipsis for you coming up, and you might want to try using an ellipsis in your writing today. So here's a definition for you. Ellipses show that words have been missed out. They're sometimes used to make writing suspenseful, and they give you an example here. Tia entered the woods where the monster lives, creating that drama, that suspense. They can also be used to show the trailing off of thoughts or to create suspense. I know that I've seen my key somewhere. If only she hadn't opened the door. I decided to, then I left. So experiment with using an ellipsis in your story writing today. So let's see what we're going to be doing in our writing. Today, you're going to be carrying on your story. And in your story, you need to explain where they go first and what it's like there. Who do they meet and what problem do they face and how is it solved? Now, when you're describing the first country that they arrive in, it's really important that you use a good range of adjectives to paint a picture in your reader's mind. So, for example, if I said, Mr. White and the penguin chick arrived in a forest. Now, in my mind, I might have a picture of what a forest might look like, but it's not really giving the reader much information. So it would be better to say, Mr. White and the baby penguin arrived in the deep, dark forest. There were tall trees everywhere, and from the trees grew long, tangled vines. Now, I've all of a sudden changed my idea of what my forest might look like. In my mind, I was first thinking about a forest in England full of oak trees, but now by using the adjectives to describe the forest, I'm thinking this forest sounds more like a tropical forest, maybe a jungle. So can you see how important it is that you use a good range of descriptive language so your reader can be with you on that journey? So let's have a look at some of the places that the Pilchard Browns visited on their journey and how each place is described. When describing a place, you need to think about the appearance, what it looks like, maybe the weather, and any sort of important landmarks that your characters might see. So, for example, on the page where they visit England, I can see Big Ben in the distance there. And in India, I can see the Taj Mahal in the distance. So I'm going to read to you some of the descriptive language that Jean Willis uses when describing those two places. So let's find England. They followed Mr. White all the way to England. How do you do, said Mr. Pilchard Brown. Grey, said Peaky. Grand, said Poots. England was charming, but it wasn't home. So they followed Mr. White all the way to, and then it carries on. So the author has used the word grey to describe the weather, grand to describe the buildings, charming to describe the atmosphere of the country. Let's have a look at India. This is my favourite page. Namaste, said Mr. Pilchard Brown. Hot, said Peaky. Huge, said Poots. India was dazzling, but it wasn't home. So hot describes the weather. Huge might describe the elephant or maybe the Taj Mahal. And dazzling, all those beautiful, bright colours all around them. So some really lovely adjectives that she has used to describe both England and India. So you might want to include some interesting adjectives to describe the first place that your characters arrive in. So you're going to carry on with writing your story. Now, whenever we carry on a piece of writing, it's really important that you go back and read what you have already written, because it's very easy to forget what we've written and lose our train of thought. So before you start to write, I want you to read your story so far so that you know where you left off. So once you've done that, then I'm going to show you a checklist of things I want you to do in your writing today. So your task is to use your plan to write the next part of your story. I want you to concentrate today on just describing the first country they arrive in and who they meet and what the problem is. The reason I don't want you to write about all your countries is I don't want you to rush your story. It's really important that each part is well described and you take your time over it. So when arriving in your first country, I want you to describe where the characters are. So thinking about using adjectives to describe what they can see, what the weather is like, and also how they feel when they arrive. Next, you want to think about who they meet in that country. Now, try and use an animal that would live in that country. You might need to do a little bit of research on that first. So, for example, I've said that they might meet a fox in England. How does that character help them on their journey? And I've given you an example here. It says, the fox carried the little chick on his back through the dark forests and beautiful fields until they got to the sea. Then what is the problem they face? I've decided that maybe the chick felt a bit lonely because wherever he looked, he couldn't see any other penguins, so just people everywhere. So I've written, the chick felt lonely because he couldn't see anyone that looked like him. England was too full of people, so they travelled to, and then I'll be going on to my next country. But maybe your characters might have an even more difficult problem to solve. Maybe something happens to them on their journey. So today I would like you to do one more part of your story, thinking about the first country they arrive at, who they meet, what happens to them, what problems they face, and how they overcome them. Once you've done that, then I want you to read through your writing again and check your writing for capital letters at the start of a sentence, for names and places, a full stop at the end of the sentence. You might be using exclamation marks and an ellipsis today, and also check your spelling. Once you've done that, read it through again and make sure your story makes sense. Does it follow your plan? Is it well sequenced? And is it entertaining? Do you think your reader will be entertained by what you've written so far? Have you used enough interesting vocabulary to make it a good story to read? So I look forward to seeing what you have written today. You can send your stories so far to us on the Year 2 email. And next week, we will be writing a little bit more of our story. So enjoy your work today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.